Amara Ellis just wanted to find the perfect dress, a simple moment to step out of her famous father's shadow and claim her independence. But one fateful visit to the Elon boutique, a haven for the elite, turns her world upside down when an encounter with a prejudiced store manager escalates into violence. What begins as a personal fight against injustice quickly spirals into a viral movement, exposing systemic discrimination in the fashion industry. With her father, retired NFL legend Damian Ellis, by her side, Amara finds herself navigating public scrutiny, corporate resistance, and deeply buried family secrets that challenge everything she thought she knew about justice and privilege. As the lines between villain and victim blur, Amara discovers a shocking connection that ties the boutique's practices to a dark chapter in Damian's past. Now, she must decide whether to stand her ground or risk everything to hold an entire system accountable. In this gripping tale of resilience and truth, one young woman's voice ignites a movement that forces the world to confront its deepest prejudices and proves that real change starts with the courage to speak out. The sun blazed above the glossy shopfronts of the city's upscale shopping district, bouncing off the spotless glass that displayed glittering dresses and elegant accessories. Amara Ellis adjusted her sunglasses, the Californian heat prickling her skin as she parked her car a block away. She sat for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, steadying herself. "You've got this," she murmured. Her reflection in the rearview mirror stared back, her hazel eyes holding a flicker of determination. Today was about proving something, not to anyone else, but to herself. The Winter Gala was her opportunity to make an impression, not as the daughter of Damian Ellis, the ex-NFL superstar, but as Amara. Just Amara. The Elon boutique loomed ahead of her, a monument to luxury. Its name shimmered in gold script against the glass facade. Amara squared her shoulders and stepped inside. The boutique's interior was almost unnervingly pristine. White marble floors gleamed beneath her sneakers, and racks of designer gowns seemed to float under golden lighting. A faint, expensive fragrance lingered in the air. Something floral, something unattainable. Amara hesitated, catching the assessing glances of a few employees who paused mid-conversation to look her up and down. Her practical tracksuit and sneakers seemed to shout that she didn't belong. "Focus," she whispered, and walked toward the evening gowns. Amara's fingers grazed the fabric of a midnight blue gown that shimmered like the ocean under moonlight. She imagined herself in it, the way it would flow as she walked, the way it would make her feel powerful. She smiled to herself. "Excuse me," she said, turning toward the counter. Behind it stood a tall woman in a fitted blazer and pencil skirt, her platinum blonde hair styled into a sharp bob. The woman's name tag read Claire Maxwell, and her expression was as icy as her demeanor. Claire glanced up from her tablet, arching a perfectly sculpted brow. "Yes? I'd like to try this on," Amara said, holding up the gown. Claire's lips curved into a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Are you sure you're in the right store?" The words stung, but Amara kept her voice steady. "I'm pretty sure I am. I'd like to try this dress." Claire set her tablet down with deliberate slowness, her gaze raking over Amara from head to toe. "That dress is part of our exclusive collection," she said, her tone thick with condescension. "We don't typically allow everyone to handle pieces like this." Amara's jaw tightened. "I'm a customer," she said firmly. "I have every right to try it on." Claire's smile vanished. "Do you? Because gowns like that come with a hefty price tag. Perhaps I could recommend something more accessible." Amara's hands tightened around the dress's hanger. "I didn't ask for your recommendations," she said, her voice sharp now. "I asked to try this dress." Claire stepped out from behind the counter, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Her movements were slow, deliberate, and predatory. "Girls like you don't belong here," she hissed, her voice dropping low enough that only Amara could hear. The words hung in the air, slicing through Amara's composure. Her chest tightened, her fists clenched, but she refused to let Claire see her falter. "Excuse me?" Amara said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "You heard me," Claire replied, her smile as thin and sharp as a blade. Amara turned on her heel and began walking toward the fitting rooms, the gown draped over her arm. Claire's voice stopped her in her tracks. "Miss, I must insist you stop right there." Amara turned slowly, meeting Claire's cold glare. "Is there a problem?" Amara asked. "That gown is not for everyone to try on," Claire snapped, stepping closer. "You need to put it back." "No," Amara said, her voice rising. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm trying this dress on." Before she could react, Claire's hand shot out, grabbing the gown. "What is your problem?" Amara demanded, pulling the dress back. "I'm protecting store property," Claire spat, yanking harder. The delicate fabric slipped from Amara's grasp, and as she reached to grab it back, Claire lashed out, striking her across the cheek. The sound of the slap echoed through the boutique. For a moment, time froze. Amara staggered back, her hand flying to her face. Claire stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock at her own action. "You hit me," Amara whispered, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Amara's face burned, not just from the slap, but from the humiliation. The eyes of other customers and employees bore into her as she turned and stormed out of the boutique, her sneakers squeaking against the marble floors. The crisp air hit her cheeks as she stepped onto the sidewalk, but it did little to cool her anger. The scene replayed in her mind. Claire's smirk, the sting of her words, and the slap that cut deeper than any insult. She pulled her phone from her pocket, her hands trembling. She stared at the screen, her reflection staring back at her. Her cheek was red, her hazel eyes blazing with fury. "My name is Amara Ellis," she said, her voice steady as she hit record. "And this is what happened to me today." She recounted the encounter, her words raw and unfiltered. "People need to see this," she said, staring into the camera. "This isn't just about a dress. It's about the way people are treated, the way they think they can treat you because of how you look." Her finger hovered over the post button. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, she hit post. Amara pushed the door to her family's home open, the smell of baked chicken wafting from the kitchen. She dropped her keys on the table and headed straight for the living room. Damian Ellis sat on the couch, flipping through the sports channel. "Hey, kid," he said, glancing up. "How'd it go?" Amara didn't respond, but the look on her face made Damian mute the TV. "What happened?" he asked, his deep voice soft but commanding. Amara hesitated before sinking onto the couch beside him. "Something awful," she said, her voice cracking. "I went to that boutique, the fancy one I told you about, and the manager there." She paused, the words catching in her throat. Damian placed a hand on her shoulder. "Take your time," he said. "She insulted me," Amara said, her anger resurfacing. "She wouldn't let me try on a dress. And when I insisted, she hit me." Damian's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. "She what?" Amara nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I recorded a video about it. I posted it. People need to know what happened." Damian exhaled, running a hand over his face. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "But this isn't over." We're not letting this slide. Amara leaned into her father's embrace, her resolve hardening. She wouldn't let anyone silence her. Not Claire, not the boutique, not anyone. Amara's phone buzzed incessantly on her nightstand, dragging her out of a restless sleep. She squinted at the screen, the soft glow illuminating her room. Notifications flooded her social media apps. The video she'd posted had been shared thousands of times overnight. The caption, "This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's been told they don't belong," resonated far beyond her expectations. "Oh my God," she whispered, scrolling through the comments. Messages of outrage, support, and shared experiences flooded in. Her father's deep voice startled her. "Everything okay, kid?" Amara turned to see Damien leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. She held up her phone. "The video, it's blowing up. Look at this." Damien stepped closer, scanning the screen. His jaw tightened as he read the comments. "Good. People need to see what happened. But this kind of attention can get messy, Amara. Are you ready for that?" She hesitated, her heart pounding. "I have to be. This isn't just about me anymore." Later that morning, Amara sat in the kitchen with her father, the TV humming in the background. A segment on a local news channel caught her attention. The daughter of retired NFL star Amara Ellis is making waves on social media after sharing a disturbing encounter at a high-end boutique. The video, which has now gone viral, highlights systemic discrimination in the retail industry. Amara groaned. "They're making it about you. I don't want this to be about you." Damien gave her a steady look. "Amara, people are always going to tie you to me. But that doesn't mean your voice isn't being heard. Look at the bigger picture." She gestured to the TV. "The bigger picture is that they're treating me like your accessory. This isn't about my last name." Damien placed a hand on hers. "Then make them listen. Keep talking. Keep posting. They'll figure out soon enough that you're not just my kid. You're your own force." His words settled her frustration. The determination in her father's eyes mirrored her own, giving her the push she needed to refocus. That afternoon, Amara's inbox buzzed with an unexpected message. "Hi Amara, my name is Evelyn Carter. I'm a civil rights advocate and saw your video. I'd love to talk about how we can work together to push this conversation further. Let me know if you're interested." Amara's curiosity piqued. She Googled Evelyn's name and found articles about her work advocating for marginalized communities. Without hesitating, Amara replied, setting up a video call. When the call connected, Evelyn's warm, steady voice greeted her. "Amara, it's so good to meet you. You're brave for sharing your story." "Thank you," Amara replied. "I wasn't sure what to expect when I posted it, but the response has been overwhelming." Evelyn nodded. "That's the power of speaking out. But you need to prepare for what comes next. When you shine a light on injustice, the shadows push back." Amara leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Criticism, trolls, people twisting your words," Evelyn explained. "But you've started something important, and I want to help you navigate it." Evelyn's guidance felt like a lifeline. For the first time since the video went viral, Amara felt like she had direction. That evening, Damien found Amara scrolling through comments on her video. He sat beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I've been thinking," Damien said. "Maybe it's time I spoke out too." Amara looked up, surprised. "You've never talked about your experiences publicly." "I know," Damien admitted. "But seeing what happened to you, it reminded me of all the times I stayed silent when I shouldn't have. I don't want you to feel like you're fighting this alone." Amara felt a lump rise in her throat. "You've always protected me, Dad. But this This is something I have to stand for on my own too. I get that, Damien said, but standing with you doesn't take away your power. It adds to it. His words were both comforting and inspiring. Amara nodded. Okay, let's do this together. Meanwhile, across town, Claire Maxwell sat in her office at the Elon boutique, staring at her phone. Her stomach churned as she scrolled through the notifications flooding the boutique's social media page. Boycott Elon Boutique. Disgusting behavior. Do better. Her heart sank further when her supervisor's name flashed on the screen. She answered reluctantly. Claire. The voice on the other end was curt. We've seen the video. What the hell happened? She was causing a scene, Claire stammered. I was just trying to maintain order in the store. Claire, you slapped her, the voice snapped. Do you realize what kind of damage this is doing to our reputation? Claire tried to argue, but the supervisor cut her off. You're suspended effective immediately, pending an investigation. We'll contact you with next steps. The call ended, leaving Claire in stunned silence. For the first time, the weight of her actions truly began to sink in. Amara stood behind the podium, the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. Cameras flashed, reporters buzzed, and the crowd outside her home waited for her to speak. Damien stood a step behind her, a silent pillar of support. She glanced at her father, who gave her an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the edges of the podium. Good afternoon, she began, her voice steady but firm. Thank you all for being here. I wish I were standing here under different circumstances, but I'm here because what happened to me at the Elon boutique isn't just about one dress or one store. It's about a pattern of discrimination that so many people face every day. Reporters murmured as she continued, her words growing stronger. For years, I've watched people make assumptions about me because of how I look, where I shop, or what I wear. This time, I decided not to stay silent. The crowd was silent now, hanging on to her every word. She felt the fire inside her ignite. This is bigger than me. It's about making sure no one else feels like they don't belong simply because of who they are. She stepped back as Damien approached the mic. His deep, commanding voice cut through the quiet. As a father, nothing hurts more than seeing your child mistreated. But as a man, as a black man in America, I know all too well what my daughter experienced that day. We're here not just to demand accountability from one store, but to spark a conversation about how we treat each other. The applause that erupted surprised Amara. She exchanged a glance with Damien, feeling a surge of hope. Maybe they were finally being heard. That hope didn't last long. By the time Amara returned to her room, her phone was buzzing with new notifications. She smiled at first, reading the messages of support and solidarity. But then came the trolls. Just another entitled rich kid playing the victim, using daddy's fame to make a scene. If you don't like the rules, shop somewhere else. Her stomach turned as she scrolled. A comment caught her eye. If this was really about justice, why does she need a press conference? Clout chasing much? She slammed her phone onto the bed just as Damien knocked and stepped inside. You okay, kid? He asked, his brow furrowed. No, she admitted, sinking onto the bed. They're tearing me apart. I knew people would have opinions, but this, it's cruel. Damien sat beside her, his large hand resting on her shoulder. It's noise, Amara. That's all it is. You know your truth. Focus on the people who are standing with you. She looked at him, her eyes glistening. But what if they're right? What if this is all for nothing? He shook his head. It's not for nothing. You've already made people listen. Don't let the ones who don't matter drown out the ones who do. His words offered some comfort, but Amara couldn't shake the sting of the criticism. The next morning, Amara met Evelyn Carter at a bustling cafe. Evelyn greeted her warmly, her voice steady and reassuring. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better," Amara admitted, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "The trolls are relentless." Evelyn nodded sympathetically. "That's the price of speaking out. But I have good news. I've been looking into the Elon boutique, and you're not the first person to experience this kind of treatment there." Amara perked up. "What do you mean?" Evelyn slid a folder across the table. Inside were testimonies from other customers and even a few former employees, all describing incidents of profiling and discrimination. "This isn't just about Claire Maxwell," Evelyn explained. "It's systemic." Amara felt a mix of anger and determination rise in her chest. "We have to do something. People need to know this isn't an isolated incident." Evelyn smiled. "That's where Jordan comes in. He's a digital strategist who can help us amplify these stories." Later that day, Amara and Evelyn met Jordan Vasquez at a co-working space. Jordan, a wiry young man with an easy smile and a laptop seemingly glued to his hands, waved them over. "Amara, Evelyn, great to finally meet you." Jordan wasted no time diving into his plans. "Your video has already gone viral, but we need to keep the momentum going. If we can collect more stories from people who've experienced discrimination, we can build a campaign that's impossible to ignore." Amara nodded. "How do we find these stories?" Jordan grinned. "Leave that to me. I've already set up a platform where people can submit their experiences anonymously. We'll curate the most impactful ones and start sharing them." Amara was impressed by his enthusiasm. "I want to help. This fight, it's not just mine anymore." "Exactly," Jordan said. "And with your voice leading the way, people will listen." Meanwhile, Claire sat in her dimly lit apartment, scrolling through the backlash against the Elon boutique. Her suspension had left her in a precarious position. She thought about calling the corporate office to plead her case, but deep down, she knew she'd crossed a line. Her phone buzzed with a text from a former colleague. "They're throwing you under the bus, Claire. Be careful." She tossed the phone aside, anger bubbling inside her. All she'd ever wanted was to succeed in an industry that demanded perfection. The pressure to maintain the boutique's image had been overwhelming. But had it really justified what she'd done to Amara? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was her neighbor, a middle-aged woman who had always been kind to her. "Claire, I saw the news," the woman said gently. "Are you okay?" Claire hesitated. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought I was doing my job, but maybe I went too far." The neighbor nodded. "It's never too late to make things right." Claire closed the door, her mind racing. For the first time, she considered what making things right might look like. The glass doors of the Elon boutique swung open with a soft chime. Amara walked in, her head high, with Damien close behind her. The once familiar scent of citrus and floral perfume now carried the weight of confrontation. Staff members froze mid-task as they noticed her. Whispers swept across the room like ripples in still water. Claire Maxwell appeared from the back, her face paling as she spotted Amara and Damien. She hesitated before stepping forward, her professional mask firmly in place. "Miss Ellis," Claire said stiffly, clasping her hands in front of her. "I'm surprised to see you again." "I'm sure you are," Amara said, her tone even but firm. "We need to talk." Claire straightened her posture. "If this is about..." "It's about accountability," Damien interrupted, his deep voice resonating through the boutique. "You humiliated my daughter, assaulted her, and now the whole world knows. But this isn't just about you, is it? Claire flinched but didn't falter. I followed the store's policies. I acted in the boutique's best interest. Amara stepped closer. Did you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like discrimination disguised as policy. And you've been using it to justify your actions. The tension thickened as Claire glanced at the staff, many of whom quickly busied themselves elsewhere. She opened her mouth to respond but stopped when Damien spoke again. "We're not going anywhere until we get answers," he said, his voice low and commanding. That same afternoon, the Elon Boutique issued a statement on their social media channels. Amara read it aloud to Damien and Evelyn at her kitchen table. "We at the Elon Boutique are deeply sorry for the incident involving Miss Ellis and are committed to fostering an inclusive shopping environment. We are implementing diversity training for our staff and reviewing our policies to prevent future misunderstandings." Evelyn scoffed. "Diversity training? That's the corporate equivalent of slapping a Band-Aid on a bullet wound." "It's performative," Damien said, his expression darkening. "They're hoping this blows over." Amara set the phone down, her jaw tight. "It's not enough. They can't just apologize and expect everyone to forget what happened." "This isn't over." Evelyn nodded. "Good. Because we need to keep the pressure on. They've shown their hand. Now we push back harder." Evelyn spread out papers and a laptop on the coffee table as Amara and Jordan joined her. The small living room buzzed with their energy. "We need to turn this into a broader movement," Evelyn began, pulling up a slideshow. "People are already talking about your story, Amara. But to make lasting change, we need to show this isn't just one incident. It's systemic." Jordan leaned forward. "I've been tracking hashtags tied to the boutique and similar cases. The stories are out there, but they're scattered. We need to unify them under one message." Amara nodded. "How do we do that?" "We start a campaign," Evelyn said. "Call it something that invites people to share their experiences, like hashtag retail justice or hashtag stand up together." Jordan grinned. "I can build a website where people can submit their stories anonymously. We can highlight the patterns, the policies, and the people being affected." Amara's chest swelled with a mix of pride and determination. "Let's do it. If we can make this bigger than just me, they won't be able to ignore it." That evening, Amara sat in front of a camera, live streaming to her growing audience. The screen filled with comments as thousands tuned in to hear her speak. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I started this journey because of what happened to me at the Elon Boutique, but I've realized this isn't just my fight. It's about all of us who've been judged, excluded, or mistreated because of who we are." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "I want to hear your stories. Together, we can shine a light on these injustices and demand change. Visit the link in my bio to share your experience, and let's stand up together." The comments exploded with support. Amara felt a wave of relief as she signed off. "How did I do?" she asked Jordan, who had been monitoring the stream. "You crushed it," he said. "The submissions are already coming in." Evelyn smiled from her seat. "You're a natural, Amara. Keep this up, and we'll have the momentum we need." Meanwhile, Claire sat alone in her apartment, staring at the news coverage of Amara's live stream. Her face reflected back at her in the dark screen of her muted TV. Her phone buzzed with an email from corporate. It was short and curt. "Please refrain from commenting on the current situation while our investigation is ongoing." She tossed the phone onto the coffee table, anger simmering beneath her polished exterior. Corporate had hung her out to dry, and she knew it. All the years she'd spent enforcing their policies, protecting their image, and maintaining their standards. What had it gotten her? Claire thought back to her conversation with her neighbor. It's never too late to make things right. She stared at the email again, her mind racing. If corporate wasn't going to take responsibility, maybe she needed to tell the truth herself. Amara stood at the center of a makeshift stage outside the Elon boutique. A sea of supporters filled the plaza, holding signs that read slogans like "Retail Justice Now" and "Discrimination Has No Style." Cameras from local news outlets framed the scene as she stepped up to the microphone, Damien and Evelyn standing behind her. "Thank you for being here today," Amara began, her voice steady despite the overwhelming crowd. "This fight isn't just about one store or one incident. It's about standing against a culture that tells us we don't belong because of the way we look, where we're from, or how much money they think we have." The crowd erupted into applause, their energy feeding her confidence. "Today, we're demanding real accountability from the Elon boutique and every other institution that thinks it can hide behind empty apologies. Together, we can make sure they hear us." The rally continued with speeches from Evelyn and other activists, each voice amplifying the collective anger and determination. Damien's turn at the mic was brief but impactful. "As a father, I stand here to protect my daughter. As a man, I stand here to protect all of us." Amara scanned the crowd, her heart swelling as she saw people of all backgrounds uniting for the same cause. That evening, Amara, Jordan, and Evelyn huddled around Jordan's laptop in Evelyn's community center. Jordan's fingers flew across the keyboard as he sifted through public records and insider tips that had come in through their campaign's website. "Got it," Jordan said suddenly, pointing to a document on the screen. "Here's a memo from the Elon Boutique's corporate office. It explicitly states that staff should prioritize maintaining the brand's exclusivity and limit access to sensitive items for individuals who do not fit the brand's image." Amara's stomach churned. "That's exactly what Claire said to me," she whispered. "They encouraged this." Evelyn nodded grimly. "This isn't just a rogue manager. This is systemic." "Wait," Jordan said, scrolling further. His face darkened. "Look at this. The CEO of the Elon Boutique. His name is Henry Caldwell. There's a report tying him to discriminatory hiring practices at another company years ago." Evelyn leaned in. "If we connect Caldwell's history to the current policies, we can expose the entire operation." Amara felt a surge of determination. "Then that's what we'll do." As the group wrapped up for the night, Damien walked Amara to her car. The usually confident man seemed uneasy, his hands shoved into his pockets. "There's something I need to tell you," he said quietly. Amara stopped, sensing the gravity of his tone. "What is it, Dad?" Damien sighed, leaning against the car. "Henry Caldwell isn't just some random CEO. Back when I was playing in the NFL, he ran a luxury marketing firm that refused to work with me because they didn't want a black athlete representing their brand." Amara's breath caught. "And now he owns the boutique?" Damien nodded. "I never spoke out about it back then. I didn't want to risk my career. But seeing what you're doing now, it makes me wish I had." Amara placed a hand on his arm. "We can expose him together. This is bigger than just you or me." Damien nodded, his resolve returning. "Let's do it." The next day, Amara received a surprising email from Claire Maxwell. The subject line read, "I need to talk." Against her better judgment, Amara agreed to meet Claire at a small cafe away from prying eyes. Claire looked different. Her usually polished exterior was replaced with a more subdued appearance, her expression tinged with regret. "Thank you for meeting me," Claire began, her voice quiet. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to talk to." "You're right," Amara said bluntly. So why are we here? Claire fidgeted with her coffee cup. Because I need to make things right. I've been suspended indefinitely, and I've had a lot of time to think about what happened. The truth is, I was following orders. The corporate office pushed us to maintain this exclusive image, and I bought into it. That doesn't excuse what you did, Amara said, her tone sharp. I know, Claire admitted, her voice breaking. But if you're going after corporate, I want to help. I can give you everything I know about their policies. Amara studied her, conflicted. Why now? Claire looked her in the eye. Because I've been in your shoes before. When I first started in this industry, I was treated the same way I treated you. I thought climbing the ladder would protect me, but all it did was turn me into them. I don't want to be that person anymore. Amara sat back, considering her words. If you're serious about helping, then prove it. But this doesn't erase what you did. Claire nodded. I don't expect it to. Amara, Damien, Evelyn, and Jordan gathered in Damien's home office that evening. The weight of their discoveries and Claire's offer heavy in the air. We have enough evidence to go public with this, Jordan said, spreading documents and screenshots across the desk. Between the memos, the testimonies, and Caldwell's history, we can blow the lid off this thing. Evelyn nodded. But we need to be strategic. This isn't just about exposing them. It's about forcing change. Amara leaned forward. Claire's willing to testify against them. Her perspective as a former manager could be the key to proving this is systemic. Damien crossed his arms, his expression serious. But we can't trust corporate to back down easily. They'll fight this with everything they've got. Then we fight harder, Amara said firmly. This isn't just about taking them down. It's about showing everyone that things can change. The room fell silent as her words sank in. Finally, Damien spoke. Then let's get to work. The courtroom smelled faintly of wood polish and tension. Amara sat beside her lawyer, a poised woman named Lisa Morgan, who had been fiercely dedicated to the case. Damien sat on her other side, his broad shoulders squared in silent support. Across the aisle, a small team of Elon boutique lawyers whispered to each other. Amara leaned toward Lisa. Do you think they'll settle? Lisa shook her head. Not yet. They'll fight this until the last second. Their reputation is on the line. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. As the proceedings began, Amara felt the weight of what was ahead. Lisa delivered opening remarks, laying out the case for systemic discrimination rooted in Elon Boutique's policies. When the boutique's lead counsel took the floor, their strategy became clear. Paint Amara as an entitled celebrity using her father's fame to stir controversy. Miss Ellis, the lawyer sneered. Do you deny that your viral video brought unprecedented attention to this store? I don't deny it, Amara said firmly, meeting their gaze. But that attention wasn't about me. It was about the way people like me are treated. Her words set the tone for what would become a grueling legal battle. Outside the courtroom, the boutique's PR machine was in full swing. Slick ads filled social media feeds, highlighting their commitment to diversity with smiling models from different backgrounds. Amara scrolled through her phone, disgusted. Can you believe this? She asked Evelyn, holding up the screen. Evelyn glanced at it, her expression unimpressed. It's textbook damage control. They think they can outmarket the truth. Damien joined them, his brow furrowed. We need to counter this narrative. They're trying to drown out your voice. That's what they want, Amara said. But we won't let them. We've got the facts, the testimonies, and the public's attention. Let's make sure they hear it. Jordan chimed in from his laptop. We've got a live stream scheduled for tomorrow. You ready to tell the world what's really happening? Amara nodded. More than ready. The next day in court, Claire Maxwell took the stand. Her polished demeanor was gone, replaced with a quiet resolve. She avoided eye contact with Amara as she settled into the witness chair. Lisa began the questioning. Miss Maxwell, you were the manager of the Elon boutique on the day in question, correct? Yes, Claire said softly. And can you explain the policies you were following when interacting with customers? Claire hesitated, glancing at the boutique's legal team. Then, with a deep breath, she said, "We were instructed to maintain the brand's exclusivity. That meant profiling customers, deciding who fit the boutique's image." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Lisa pressed on. "Who gave these instructions?" "They came from corporate," Claire said, her voice steady now. "Specifically, Henry Caldwell. He made it clear that our priority was to protect the brand, even if it meant turning people away." Amara felt a mix of vindication and sadness. Claire's actions had hurt her deeply, but hearing the truth made her see the bigger picture. As Claire's testimony spread through the media, public opinion began to shift even further in Amara's favor. A major news outlet aired an investigative piece highlighting the discriminatory practices at the Elon boutique. The story featured interviews with other victims who had come forward through Amara's campaign. Evelyn couldn't hide her excitement as she read the latest headlines aloud. "Listen to this. Boutique policies under fire after explosive testimony. This is exactly what we needed." Amara smiled, relief washing over her. "It's not just about my story anymore. It's about everyone who's been silenced." Damien placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've done something incredible, kid. People are finally listening." Jordan nodded from his laptop. "And the best part? The boutique stock is tanking. Shareholders are demanding answers from Caldwell." Amara felt a flicker of hope. The tide was turning. The final day of the trial arrived, and the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Amara took the stand, her heart pounding as she faced the room. Lisa began gently. "Amara, can you tell us why you decided to share your story?" Amara looked at the judge, the jury, and the audience. "Because I was tired of staying silent. What happened to me that day wasn't just about a dress or a store. It was about being told I didn't belong. And I know I'm not the only one." She glanced at Damien, who nodded encouragingly. "I shared my story because I wanted to show others that they don't have to accept this kind of treatment, that their voices matter." The opposing counsel tried to rattle her, but Amara held her ground. By the time she stepped down, she felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. As the jury left to deliberate, Lisa leaned toward her. "You did great. Now we wait." The courtroom was electric with anticipation as the jury filed back into the room. Amara sat between Damien and Lisa, her heart hammering in her chest. She felt the weight of every story she had heard, every voice she was fighting for. This moment was bigger than her. The judge asked the foreperson to stand. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "Yes, Your Honor," the foreperson said, her voice clear and steady. The next few moments felt like an eternity. Amara gripped Damien's hand as the foreperson read the verdict aloud. "We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Amara Ellis." The room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Amara exhaled sharply, tears brimming in her eyes. She turned to Lisa, who grinned and whispered, "You did it." Damien leaned over, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it, kid." The judge's voice cut through the commotion, outlining the court's orders. Mandatory inclusivity training, a review of corporate hiring practices, and a public apology from the Elon boutique. For the first time in weeks, Amara felt a sense of peace. Back at home, Amara sat on the couch, scrolling through messages on her phone. The support was overwhelming. People from all over the country shared their own victories, inspired by her courage. One message caught her attention. It was from a young woman named Bianca. "Because of you, I stood up to my boss. He'd been treating me differently because of my background, but I finally had the courage to speak up. Thank you for showing me it's possible." Amara smiled, her chest swelling with pride. She forwarded the message to Evelyn, adding, "This is what it's all about." Evelyn replied almost instantly, "And we're just getting started." Damien walked into the room, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Still reading through those?" he asked, handing her one. "Yeah," Amara said. "It's amazing how many people have been affected by this. It's humbling." Damien sat beside her. "You've done something incredible, Amara. But remember, this isn't the end. It's the foundation." A week later, Amara and Damien stood on a stage at the Shaquille O'Neal Civic Field. The event they had planned, a community rally and resource fair, was in full swing. White tents lined the open field, staffed by volunteers offering everything from legal advice to mental health counseling. Amara approached the microphone, her hazel eyes scanning the diverse crowd. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady and warm. "This started with a single moment of injustice. But what I've learned is that one voice can spark a movement. And now, together, we're creating real change." The crowd erupted into cheers. Amara stepped back, and Damien took her place. "I've always taught my daughter to stand up for what's right," he said. "But she's taught me something, too, that it's never too late to speak up." After the speeches, Amara moved through the tents, stopping to chat with attendees. A mother approached her with 2 young children. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've given us hope." Amara knelt down to the children's level. "What are your names?" "I'm Mia," the little girl said shyly, holding her brother's hand. "Well, Mia," Amara said, smiling, "you're going to do amazing things. Remember that your voice matters." The girl beamed, and her mother mouthed, "Thank you." Amara spotted Claire Maxwell standing near a tent marked Inclusivity Training Initiative. The former boutique manager looked different, more relaxed, her polished exterior replaced by a more approachable demeanor. Amara approached her cautiously. "Claire." Claire turned, her expression softening. "Amara, I wasn't sure you'd want to talk to me." "I wasn't sure either," Amara admitted. "But I'm glad you're here." Claire nodded, glancing at the banner behind her. "I needed to do this, to make up for everything." "It's a start," Amara said. "What made you decide to join the initiative?" Claire hesitated, then said, "Because I know what it feels like to be excluded. I let that fear drive me to hurt others. I can't change what I've done, but I can try to make sure it doesn't happen again." Amara studied her for a moment, then extended her hand. "Then let's work together." Claire took it, a small smile forming. "I'd like that." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Amara and Damien sat on the edge of the stage, watching families and volunteers pack up the tents. The field buzzed with the lingering energy of the day. "Not a bad turnout," Damien said, nudging her playfully. "Not bad at all," Amara agreed, her voice tinged with satisfaction. "But this is just the beginning." Damien nodded. "So, what's next?" Amara gazed out at the field, her mind racing with possibilities. "We keep going. Build the initiative. Partner with more organizations. Make sure this momentum doesn't fade." Damien smiled, pride evident in his expression. "You're going to change the world, kid." Amara leaned against him, her heart full. Only if we do it together. As the stars began to emerge, Amara felt a deep sense of purpose. This fight had started with her, but it had grown into something so much bigger. And for the first time, she felt truly at peace, not just as Damian Ellis's daughter, but as a force for change in her own right.